Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
I'm Marty Levinson, and you're watching Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host of all hosts, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. I almost said Marty Hirsch. I was up on the web. By the way, we did 3 shows today. I'm on 3.5 hours of sleep. And for those of you who don't know, this was like if anything's going to happen, I changed my phone service switched today, and I didn't have a phone for a while. The water department's building new sewers. They shut off the water for a while today, so I had to over-prepare last night, because I've got all these guests coming for 3 shows. So, just for simple things like flushing, not to mention drinking water, emergencies, whatever. And on top of it, the city decided to clean the street today, and nobody could park on the side of the street or around the corner. So it's been a very interesting day, and this is our last interview of the day. And it is a pleasure to have someone, caps24.org, community policing, Sonny Hirsch, Chairman District Advisory Board, watch us on ntnm.org, over 1,000 videos, 300,000 plus watches. And it is a pleasure to have someone we refer to as election lawyer extraordinaire. And I have to say, I do like that title, even if I coined it myself. James B. Nally. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me, Avi.
First of all, thank you so much for coming. And the weather's nice. It's sunny. The Cubs are doing well. But you know what? We always have to talk about politics first. Well, first of all, let's talk about election law just for a second. Have there been any changes that loom for the next election right now?
There was actually a bill in Springfield to make some major changes, which did not get out of committee as far as I know. So nothing at this point, but as you know, the legislature is not done meeting, and there will probably be an extended session for the summer. So I'll keep you posted, and in the fall I'll have a better ability to bring you up to date on anything new.
I appreciate, one thing I want to say too, one of the elements to the reporting in Springfield this year that I really enjoy is somebody who actually, I needed 2 people to take your place for the election show when you weren't available. And one of them was Amanda Vinicky, who's who's chief of the Springfield Bureau for NPR. And she does regular report. I follow her on Twitter. I see her stuff on Facebook.
She appears on Chicago Tonight very frequently.
Yeah, very frequently, especially around now with all the legislative stuff going on. And she really gives a fair-minded, straightforward look at the day's events and is not sway. If she has any political prejudice, you can't tell, and that's a mark of a good reporter. It really is.
Definitely.
And I do appreciate her stuff is very thorough. So thank you, Amanda. And after session, we'll try to get you back on the show, and you can tell us what happened. Well, you know what? One thing I want to bring up too, real quick, is the Supreme Court is about to review a case about the one man, one vote, basically.
Yes.
And for those of you who are unfamiliar, right now the congressional districts are divided by how many people live in a district. Not everybody is necessarily a voter or a citizen in those districts, but they're counted in the they're put in the count anyway. And this, if the Supreme Court, approves this, this case, basically they will take a look at who's really a citizen and or a voter.
Well, it's an interesting theory. What they're saying is, we have a census every 10 years, and that counts everybody who is in the United States without regard to age, citizenship status. It's a raw number of how many people are in the United States. It's a snapshot as of that moment. And the Supreme Court, back in the 60s, there were situations where, and this happened in Illinois. In Illinois, it was interesting, from about the 1930s to the 1950s, there was never redistricting. So the same Senate districts, the same House districts, no matter what the population shifts were, remained the same.
I didn't know that.
And so for about a 20 or 25 year period, what happened was more and more people were migrating to the urban areas and fewer people were living in the rural areas. However, the makeup of the legislature was, definitely favored people in rural areas that had lost population over those years. And people in the city, many of whom were people who had lived in a rural area prior to this and had moved to the city, were living in districts that might have twice the population of a district in a rural area. So that reached the Supreme Court on a constitutional basis, not out of the state of Illinois, but out of other states that had similar situations where they just hadn't redistricted for decades. And the Supreme Court said, no, after every census you need to redistrict, and that's why certain states lose electoral votes based on population shifts, because the electoral votes are based on the number of people you have in Congress.
Illinois once had 26. I think we now have 19.
Right. So as population has shifted, and California now has like a quarter of all the electoral votes, or a fifth of all the electoral votes.
Over 50.
Yeah. That you would need to be elected president. And that's based on the fact that the population has shifted to areas primarily in the warmer parts of the country.
Yeah, Florida, Texas.
California.
Yeah, Illinois used to be the 4th largest state in the nation, and now we're like 7th or 8th. The only states ahead of us were New York, California, and Pennsylvania was just barely. That was according to the 1960 census, and I think the 1970 reflected similarly.
Yeah, and so basically what the Supreme Court said then was, look, take the census numbers, find out how many people are living in each state, and then just simply do the math, divide that by 435, which is the number of members of the House of Representatives, and then figure out how many House districts each state should get so that they are equal in population. And that's raw population. Again, that's what the census says. These are the number of people, regardless of their age or citizenship or any other status, who are living in this particular area as of the snapshot of that census, at that 10-year interval. So that's the way districting has gone since that time, is that simply if you've got, X number of people, you divide it by the number of congressional districts, and you try to make them as uniform as possible. For instance, in the city, this last election period, there are 50 wards, and based on the census of 2010, they wanted to get every ward, the total population divided by 50 would work out to somewhere around 55,000 people per ward. And so within, a certain statistical allowance, because you can't get it right down to 55,000, the wards were drawn in ways that would reflect that, again, based on one man, one vote, so that you would have a situation where, one ward wouldn't have, 80,000 people, and another ward would only have 30,000 people. So that's been the way things have been done for about 50 years now, based on raw population. They take the census numbers, and they use that as the basis to decide how many people need to be in each district, and then the districts, either for congressional districts or for legislative districts on a state basis, or for wards on a city basis, is divided up so that they have roughly the same population. And what this case, which I believe is out of Texas, is arguing is that people are saying, I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm a voter, and I'm living in a district where my vote is diluted because we don't count registered voters or people who are voting age population to divide up the districts. We make it a raw number. And that's violating my rights, because the way it should be done is that every district should be based on the number of voting age citizens who live in that district. So their argument is that because in certain districts in Texas, again, I believe is the state where the case comes out of.
Right, it is Texas, yes.
They're saying that a number of those districts have large populations of undocumented people, and therefore based on that those numbers really shouldn't count, that the number that should count is the people who are actually citizens eligible to vote. They're not saying that they have to be registered voters, because it's a voluntary act. You don't have to register even if you're otherwise qualified. And so that's the argument that they're taking to the Supreme Court. They're saying, no, you've got this wrong. This one man or one person, one vote concept should be for the benefit of only citizens of voting age. And based on that, that would certainly skew some of these districts in a major, major way.
Major way. Yeah, there's no question there's a tremendous number of non-citizens in a number of areas.
Now,
And by the way, that doesn't necessarily say illegal, legal, because there are non-citizens who are legal.
absolutely, yeah.
Together with the illegals. So
There are millions of people here who are, registered aliens and have green cards and are here legally, and but they aren't citizens who'd be allowed to vote, obviously.
right.
It's an interesting concept. I think where it's going to fall down, I don't see the Supreme Court going with this idea. Where it's going to fall down is we have a census which constitutionally says must count everybody who's in the country, and it makes no specifications that only registered voters must be counted, or only people of voting age who are citizens must be counted. The census constitutional provisions simply say everybody in the United States needs to be counted, and it doesn't talk about their status in the United States. So the issue would be, we've got this as the one official federal government exercise to count who's in our country. And if we now decide that it's going to be based on a count of citizens of voting age, you're going to have to develop a whole different set of statistics, and obviously that will be open to interpretation and challenge. So I think that, if you look at it, we have a constitutional system to count everybody, and then we have a constitutional provision as interpreted by the Supreme Court that one person, one vote needs to be applied so that these districts are relatively uniform in population. I just don't know where you would be able to get the valid data where the census isn't necessarily going to give it to you.
Oh, interesting. If the census doesn't give it to you, where are you going to get
Right.
the data?
Yeah, I mean, the census asks people about their citizenship and things of that nature, but you go back to what the constitutional provisions of the census are: count everybody in the United States at this particular time. So you would say that makes it appear that the rational basis is, if that's where how the Constitution wants to go about counting the population, why would you change that number in order to go about redistricting? There'd be a lack of uniformity there. You'd essentially be bringing up a new standard. You'd bring up a new set of statistics that would have to be applied in order to change that one person, one vote concept.
It's interesting because I actually find myself cheering for Texas, not so much because of the legal concept, as much as I'm just so tired of the gerrymandering. When you take a look at, like, the second ward in Chicago.
Yeah, but Avi, this wouldn't address gerrymandering.
I know, this is Congress. I know.
You just have a different pool of people. You could still
You'd
draw.
still gerrymander.
You could still draw crazy parameters for each of these districts.
Yeah, I just love to see a computer-generated map, but that's another story.
Well, there is another effort to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot. It was tried 2 years ago to. They called it the Fair Map Plan.
Yeah.
And it simply failed for a lack of valid signatures.
Yeah, but they actually came close, and with the better side, because people really are in favor of that.
Well, a lot of people appear to be.
I mean, the powers that be aren't, but...
Well, there is another effort underway now. I know that they have hired attorneys, and the attorneys have poured over the decision striking the referendum effort from the last time around, and they think that they have put together the language that would pass muster. And
the language was a problem, I think.
there was some problems with the way it was worded as well. Yes.
Yeah. So they're saying that 300,000 signatures are required. They're going to shoot for 6. Now, you being a good election lawyer, is 600,000 going to pass muster?
My rule of thumb when I tell people are gathering signatures, shoot for getting 3 times the minimum.
Yeah.
That's where I feel if you shoot for that, you're really pretty much in bulletproof territory, because if you think about it, 2 out of every 3 signatures would have to be bad. Now, having said that, my experience is that on any petition drive, you're running for alderman, you're running for state representative, you're running for the school board somewhere, despite people's diligence in trying to get good signatures, 10 to 20% will be bad, because you don't know how many people believe that the government tracks when they move and just re-registers them automatically. People think, oh, well, I moved, but of course, I did my change of address, so, they've re-registered me, not realizing, no, you have to register again.
Right. They think there's probably a camera in their dining room, and they said it out loud, and the government heard it.
And people don't remember if they're registered. They think they are. Some people are embarrassed to say that they aren't a registered voter, so they say, oh, sure, yeah, I'm a registered voter when they're asked. Actually, along these lines, there is a bill in Springfield, and I'm not sure the status. I think it did pass out of both houses. Right now we have this motor voter.
Right.
And when you go to get your driver's license, you are asked by the personnel at the Secretary of State's office, would you like to register to vote? And if the person says yes, they're given a registration card. This bill, which, prior to filming here, I didn't have a chance to check. But this bill,
Yeah, I had no idea we were going to talk about this, to be honest.
well, it kind of rolled into what we were talking
Yeah.
about good and bad signatures of registered voters. This bill would make the default position that you become a registered voter. So when you come in and get a new driver's license and say, my name is Joe Smith, and now I live at 123 Main Street in Anytown, USA, that will automatically register you to vote out of that address. So the default position isn't going to be, would you like to register to vote? And then the person has to fill out an additional card. The default position will be when they fill out that registration for their driver's license, that will serve as a registration for a voter as well.
Cool. You know what? Let's talk about the city. Let's get into politics, because if we don't talk about politics, what do we do? There were, of course, elections this year, and last month the new city council was sworn in. And so, while are there any real changes to the council?
Well, there are a lot of new aldermen. As you remember, there were a number of runoffs, and a number of incumbent aldermen lost their seats. And the Progressive Caucus, which was kind of the anti-administration group the last 4 years.
They're not necessarily all progressive. It's more, that's the word they use to be anti-administration.
Well, they called themselves the Progressive
Right.
Caucus. And that was roughly a 7 or 8 or 9 person caucus. And now that's increased up to somewhere, around 13 to 15 people.
Yeah, which actually I find encouraging, not because I necessarily want to, not without even looking at taking one side or another. I like the idea of an honest debate.
Right. And I don't think even within that caucus everybody agrees on every issue. It's
I'm
not
sure
a monolithic
they don't.
thing.
It doesn't work that way.
But I think that's kind of what this will spur. Is I think there will be more debate and more deliberation in the city council before things are done, and more transparency. Obviously, the administration is going to submit things they want to the city council to do, but I think with that number of people there, probably the administration, when they submit it, is going to just be more transparent, knowing that there are people who are, saying, well, wait a minute, what's this all about? What are the details before I vote on something? I want to know all about it. So I think it will probably be a healthy thing in terms of at least getting more information out before the council passes legislation.
Yeah, like the parking meter thing, which, but you know what? I hate to say it. I don't like being a Monday morning quarterback. Everybody thought the concept was terrific. Nobody saw the details. What's actually going to happen is the city's going to, what the city's paying in penalties over the parking meters might completely negate over 75 years the money coming in.
First of all, the money's already gone. It was paid to the city as a lump sum.
Yeah.
That money was gone within a matter of a short few years.
Yeah, that was supposed to be our rainy day fund, and
Right.
the rainy day came with the real estate collapse.
Yeah, that money's gone. So there's no more revenue coming from the parking meter deal.
And basically, you're looking at every time the city closes down a parking meter, they owe this corporation of large banks and things money
Right.
for the lack of availability. And
when they shut down a street for a festival or something like
Yeah.
that, if there are parking meters on the street, then a calculation has to be made of how much revenue was lost as a result of people not parking there because the street was shut down.
And you're talking basically, I think as much as about $30 to $35 million a year. It can be. I know there's also been figures around $25 million. But even if we take the $25 million figure, $25 million times 75 is $1.75 billion. which is more money, which is about the same amount of money
I-
approximately.
I don't think there's anybody that you talk to at this point who would not say it was a disaster. The whole deal was a disastrous deal. The money's long gone, and as you point out, the city may be on the hook for paying back penalties and fees and things of that nature. And it's a revenue source the city no longer has.
That's correct. And if the city would have hiked up the rates to that amount, not that I think that's a good idea, I think it's really hurt businesses in the city. I know a lot of people that just won't, our favorite fish mart, Sonny's and mine, Roberts, he told me that there's more and more people call him on the cell phone, and they charge it on their credit card on the phone, and he runs out to the car when they're in front, and that means they're not stopping in the neighborhood, they're not looking at the other merchants, and they're not spending the kind of money they could in the neighborhood otherwise.
No, I think that's been documented that in the local shopping areas, business is down because of this, because people don't want to park and pay to park where they were able to, at least at the current rates, where you might have been able to park there for 2 or 3 hours for $1, and now it might be $6, $7, $8.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Of the new members of the city council, are there any in particular that you really, who are your favorites among the newcomers?
Well, there are a number of people that, I've got a number of people that I represented who were incumbents, and I've got a number of people who are newcomers now. David Moore on the south side, I did not represent, but he is a newcomer. Latasha Thomas retired there, and he won outright, actually, without a runoff, which was kind of a surprise, because the retiring alderman had endorsed a different candidate. But there are people like that who have kind of broken out of the pack who are going to be interesting people to watch. In the 41st Ward, Mary O'Connor was forced into a runoff by a gentleman by the name of Anthony Napolitano, who's a fireman, and he won. So he now that area has a lot of city employees out in that ward.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of firemen, policemen, other city employees. So that'll be very interesting to see how he fits in there, because he's kind of coming out of, out of the world of city employees, but now he's also kind of the alderman for everybody.
Yeah, I kind of wish the policeman in 45 had won. He's a particular favorite of mine, but that didn't work out.
Yeah. So there are a number of new faces, and it will be interesting to see how they fit in, and if they have particular interests. It'll be interesting to see. Alderman Balzer from the 11th Ward was kind of the champion of veterans. He was a Vietnam veteran himself.
Right.
And he was very active on the years he was in the council, looking after veterans issues. And I'm not sure at this point who is going to fill that gap. Somebody will, but...
It's interesting you say that, because like Larry Supperton made a point to me I didn't even think about. He is the only person on the county board that actually served in the military.
Right. I'm not sure. So again, there's obviously issues that are important to veterans, and we certainly owe veterans whatever we can give them in terms of their service to our country. So I'm assuming that there'll be somebody in the city council who's going to step up and kind of pick up that cause and make sure that as far as city legislation and services, that the veterans get their fair share.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. That's not a little thing, that's a big thing. I'll tell you one guy that I particularly like, that I didn't favor him at all in the primary or the first election, was Brian Hopkins. When I interviewed him, I was really impressed by him. But you know what, I wanted to mention, as long as you were in the 11th Ward, I should stick there. And by the way, there were so many good candidates in the 2nd Ward, it's a shame they weren't spread over the city. There were about 7 people I really liked so much that I thought would make really good aldermen in that particular race. Patrick Daley Thompson, who was elected, is somebody I actually like, and who was a former commissioner in the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. His opponent, John Kozlar, to me, he was fresh and exciting. He's really young. But boy, I think he wound up with 42% of the vote. In an effort like that, with limited resources.
Well, one of the interesting things that comes out of this, you'll see a lot of people who ran and were newcomers and didn't make it this time. But, a lot of times your first run is just where you kind of have the training wheels on, and, there's an awful lot you have to learn, and there's no other way to learn it than by experience. But having said that, then the same people can come back around and say, now that I've been through this, I'll take another shot in 4 years at alderman, or maybe I won't wait that long. Maybe I'll run for some other office in the interim. There are a lot of people like that. Caroline Vickery in the 43rd Ward.
She's terrific.
Yeah, she...
I mean, I want to tell you something. She's another person. While I supported Michelle Smith, Caroline Vickery's a terrific individual.
Right, and she ended up losing by about 86 votes. So obviously she ran a very good campaign as a newcomer and somebody who was a first-time candidate, never had run for political office before. So, you know, every one of these people like that has now become a political veteran in terms of they've run, you know, a very high-intensity campaign and, you know, and kind of learned by doing what is involved in getting elected to public office. So,
And
even
a former Estes Siegel.
former Estes Siegel.
She
right?
never heard that phrase before I told her that was from you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a secret thing. We don't talk about that. But, you know, there are a group of people like that who I fully expect you're going to see popping up sooner rather than later in the political world because they have a lot to offer, and God knows we need the help. So people are going to be, I think, you know, as a result of that, Cornell Wilson, you know, people like that.
Terrific guy, absolutely terrific.
As you mentioned, in the second ward where there were a lot of good candidates.
Yeah.
But, you know.
By the way, I will miss Bob Fioretti.
Yeah, well, you know what? And then there are people who lost who may come back in other, you know, other forms. For, you know, all I know, Bob will be on the ballot the next time around for something. Who knows?
I'd like that. I think he was a terrific voice in the city council, and he was a voice of reason.
Yeah, so, you know, things change, but that doesn't mean that some of the same people, by virtue of their experience or their background, aren't going to pop back up and be running for other offices or be back in 4 years to run for alderman.
Yeah, no, it would be good because there was some really good fresh blood. And I'm not talking like Dracula when I say that either.
No, I think you're right. I think this cycle, and it was kind of a generational thing too. You saw a lot of people who were probably like in their 30s and 40s getting involved. And
with bright, fresh ideas.
Yeah, I mean, look, every generation has a new look at things, and you know, they bring things to the table. They see things differently, just because they grew up in a different era.
No, definitely. 2 minutes to go. Your choice of topic.
Let's talk about the Cubs. We've always been.
All right.
we've been afraid to do that for 4 or 5 years, but.
Yeah, no. I even though I am not going to listen. If they finish 81 and 81, I'll be happy. But the fact is, I didn't look at the standings after yesterday, but the day before, they would have garnered the 5th playoff spot.
You know, they may or may not be a playoff team.
Yeah,
but
I'm not going to worry about that.
You know what? At least they're fun to watch. You know,
they're a lot of fun to watch, and as a matter of fact, right now, well, Anthony Rizzo is basically near MVP. If it wasn't for Harper on Washington, he'd be the MVP of the National League right now.
And he's leading the league in hit by pitches. So.
Well, you know, 18 homers, pitchers get pissed off. But I got to tell you, Chris Bryant, if you look at the statistics, not to mention the fact that the guy can hit, ranks. I was looking at the stats last night, as a matter of fact, when I took a break from all the crazy stuff. He's basically, his stats put him in the top 20 in the major leagues in hitting. And
his on-base percentage is off the wall because I'm so impressed with him for, you know, he's a hitter. He's such a good hitter, but he's so disciplined, and he's making the pitchers pitch to him, and he's not afraid to take a walk if they don't.
Yeah, and you know what? He really has a great eye for where that ball is going to go, because if you guys are baseball fans, you know that you see this ball come in, and you just know that the pitcher's throwing a slider, and that ball is going to like curve into the dirt outside the plate, and you'll see Jorge Soler, you know, trying to golf the thing into, and he's pretty good too, and he's hurt right now, but he's going to be a heck of a player. At this point, I would talk more. I'm very excited about the Cubs too. Yeah, no predictions like you. That's the right way to do
things
to watch
for
now. Just enjoy. Compared to the last 4 or 5 years, it's wonderful. So thank you very much, election lawyer extraordinaire Jim Nally. And you're one of the few guys I can't contact on Facebook because you're too smart to go there. But
we're talking about a generational thing. Maybe I'm a little beyond that.
Well, by the way, I'm older than you, but the fact is, you know, like I hate to say it, but for a guy like me in my business, it's tailor-made. I mean, I kind of wish it was. Actually, I don't wish it was around 30 years ago because there's so many crazy people on the internet now. It's not even funny. Thank you, Sonny Hirsch. Have a good time, everybody. Bye-bye.